90% of the population is indigenous. So, Qivioq, where is Greenland in this picture we have heard now and in this demographic welfare picture?
Yes, thank you, Sveinung. My name is Qivioq Løvstrøm. It's a difficult name to pronounce, so I will just say it myself now. And Greenland is standing in a really fun spot, in an interesting spot as a researcher to look into. Thing is, we have 2/3 of the population are men, 1/3 are women. But if you look at the numbers, the women get higher grades during the whole education, from childhood on to when they become adults and go to higher education. And women are also the ones that actually choose to take the higher educations, while men usually take jobs early. Also because here in Greenland, our fishing industry is really important and it's our main industry. And you can earn a lot of money quite early if you become a good fisher. So that can also be part of the equation. But what is wrong with this photo, though, is despite having the higher grades, despite having the higher education, the unemployment rates among women is higher than among men. And you also see that when you look how we are divided into workplaces, the traditionally male or more dominant or more, as some people consider them, important jobs are taken by men, while women are usually in the service industry still, despite having higher and better education. So there is still a lot of that going on. So we have definitely taken patriarchy into ourselves when we were colonized, and we still have to get rid of that. We also look at the numbers. We have a higher fertility rate than Iceland and Denmark, but only by a little bit. And if you look at it historically, our fertility rate has fallen dramatically. And it actually goes really well with the numbers of our urbanization, because you can see the numbers that women living in the bigger cities are less likely to get pregnant, while women who live in the outer districts are the ones that get pregnant earlier. And you can see that in the outer district, you have a 50% higher pregnancy rate and birth rate actually compared to Nuuk, for example. So just by looking at the numbers, you can see that the more urbanization we have here in Greenland, the less likely we are to produce more children. So there need to be some change. But I also see something else, and that is a lot of single women, single mothers that take their education now. So maybe they start for a while and now they're at university, taking care of their child or children at the same time as they're taking a higher education. So there is a new trend with that. So because of the urbanization and the lack of housing that we have heard from Elisa, we have very, very similar problems in Greenland. And that has done that a lot of young people who have the education, who have all the qualifications needed, actually choose to remain in Denmark. In the last 10 years, Greenlandic-born Greenlanders that have moved to Denmark and live in Denmark have increased by 5,000. And it could be numbers that could increase, because if we don't have a place to put our children, if we don't have the infrastructure for it, and if we don't have a place to live ourselves, even though there's a job available, we can't take the job. And that is something that I see a lot of. And it's not only to Denmark that people move. I know quite a lot of people who have moved to Canada because there's Inuit there that they can relate to. So it's a problem we need to really focus on and do something about, because the lack of proper housing is a huge problem in Greenland. Otherwise, we have when you look at the gender imbalance, even though I just said that women are the ones getting the higher education and not getting all of the jobs that they wanted. You see that the boys are not getting empowered. We have the highest suicide rates for boys here in Greenland. So we need to do something about that. We among indigenous people have the highest suicide rates in the world. So a lot of us have actually gone around and said, if we treated suicide as we did COVID-19, so many lives would have been saved, because we lose someone very often. Any Greenlandic person you meet, they will have known 5 people who have committed suicide or more, myself included. So we have really high numbers and we need to do something about it. And that is something where we need to create proper framework for people to live. So there's a lot of things that needs to be set in motion. A lot of things have already been set in motion, but we need to click it all together and make it make sense, because otherwise we can keep having these problems with these young boys just disappearing too early. So we have social problems like any other former colonized country, and we really need to acknowledge that. And that is one of the things that we need to work on in Greenland as well. So there's a lot of different components into it, but Greenland has acknowledged all of these things. So even if you look at the government of Greenland, the first thing they said when they took office was they were going to focus on the people, on the human component. Because if we don't focus on the human component, we can't do anything here. It's the community that keeps us alive. So we need to keep doing work together. And I think it's very important that we learn from each other as well, that I can listen to what Alyssa does and what you do in other parts of Scandinavia, so that we can learn from each other, because I'm sure that some of us have made some mistakes we don't want others to repeat.
Yes, thank you very much. So what I maybe you could comment on a bit on this. As I understand you, this is not about the pride of living in Greenland, but people or young people move from Greenland often to Denmark because of better living condition in Denmark, better opportunities.
Sometimes it's about survival. It's not even young people anymore. You see old people. That's why we have a lot of homeless Greenlandic people that live in the streets in Copenhagen. Copenhagen people know them very well and treat them in a specific way, because they have always associated them with social problems. So it's not only young people, but it is a huge problem we have in Greenland, that we don't have the proper infrastructure to take care of our people.
Yes. One last comment and question. 80 to 90% of the population in Greenland is indigenous people. But is there some difference between indigenous and not indigenous in this population? As I understand it, maybe I could listen that you could see a further marginalization among indigenous people than on the other. What is your opinion about that?
Well, it is historic that the relations have been like what the Danish would like to call a father-son relationship to Greenland, where they would send some of their best people here to work and to help make the framework for how Greenland should become a new government by itself and so on. And this has been going on for half a century, I guess, a little more than that. But the thing is, when you have that kind of structure and you send people and they're the ones in power, and you start to see that there's a pattern that you see with the business people here as well. They're white. The people who earn the most money, they're white. The people in the higher positions anywhere in the government usually don't look like I do. So and the usual answer is that yes, the policy is that they're going to hire a Greenlandic person with the right qualification, and they're going to hire them first, or they're going to prefer them over a Danish person. But there's always a reason for choosing the Danish person instead. The problem is that most of these Danes, even though they're fantastic at their job and they're really good at it, they have a hard time integrating into Greenlandic society. It's not only their fault, it's also Greenlandic society, because we have experienced it so often that someone comes, stays for a year or two, earn a lot of money, and then leave again. So people kind of close off because you don't want to become best friends with someone who just leaves. So there's a lot of different ways that we can work on retaining these fantastic people who come to help us, because that's what they do. But we also need to ensure that the people that we actually have in our own population, that they get the opportunity to get the jobs.
Fine, and thank you to you, Qivioq Løvstrøm. We hope